The 2023 NFL season continues to creep up, and we talk about the biggest storylines for the Baltimore Ravens and more coming up next year on this episode of Locked On Ravens.
You are Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into another edition of the Locked On Ravens podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Kevin Oestreicher of Ravens Wire here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Thank you so much for tuning in here and making us your first listen each and every day. We're free and available all podcasting platforms, including in video form on YouTube. We are back here. It is a midweek edition of the show, and it's a special one here because it actually is the 2-year anniversary, September 6th, of starting on YouTube. We, again, did a couple of years in audio form, and then we moved over to YouTube in 2021. We're now in 2023, and it's crazy how time flies. And one of my first ever episodes, actually, well, my first ever episode was a bold prediction episode. We did bold predictions yesterday. But one of my first ever episodes was right after Marcus Peters and Gus Edwards tore their ACLs on back-to-back plays, which was not a fun one. So we'll talk about better stuff than that today as we're getting into Ravens storylines. The season is so close. You know, it feels like forever ago we were talking about Lamar Jackson and the contract situation and everything that went on with that. And I'm very glad we are still not talking about that. It would be very weird to be talking about, I guess he'd be playing on the franchise tag at this point. Maybe he'd be holding out. I don't know. But we don't have to worry about it because Lamar's a Raven for the next 5 seasons at least. So we'll talk about the biggest storylines for the team heading into the season. Then we'll also get into what to expect from the Ravens in the second part of the show. Early season, what to expect later in the year. And again, it's expectations, but we'll talk about that. And then final season predictions overall for Baltimore. I'll give those in today's episode. So we did record on Monday's show, but I want to give what I think they're going to do this season, how far I think they're going to go this season. So there's a lot to get to on today's show. Thank you for, again, being here. We're 5 days a week, so Monday through Friday, you can get your Ravens content over here, whether it is in audio form or video form. It's the same show, so you're not missing out on anything. Let's get into the Ravens' biggest storylines this year. I think one of the biggest ones is just Lamar Jackson by himself. But part of it is he's coming off of the injury. We haven't seen him play since, week 12? It was the Broncos game. I can't remember if it was week 12 or week 13. But regardless, he missed about 6 or 7 games to end the season. And it was disappointing considering what had happened the previous season when he had the injury in the Cleveland game and missed the end of that year too. But that whole 2021 season was extremely injury marred to the point where it was one of the worst injury seasons in NFL history. But for Lamar this season, there are a lot of expectations, and the storyline for him is, look, this is the best offensive cast he's had around him in terms of wide receivers, with Odell coming in, Rashad Bateman still there, Zay Flowers coming in, obviously still has Mark Andrews, but it's the best cast of weapons, plus it's a new offense. This should be an offense that Lamar Jackson's able to thrive in, more freedom within the offense as well. So everything is setting up for a big Lamar Jackson season. Does that mean he's going to have one? No, there are no guarantees. I'd predict he would, but there are no guarantees. But the big storyline is just there's so much new going on with Lamar Jackson. Plus, I feel like he's underrated almost in a way because people look at him and just see the injuries and they see the lack of pure passing yards. And I say, well, the reason for that, in terms of the passing yards, is because the Ravens ran the ball pretty much more than any team in the league, right up there. So, of course, when there are less passing attempts, and this is why I go and do yards per attempt instead of pure passing attempts or pure rushing attempts. The more passing attempts you have, the more you're going to throw for. The less passing attempts you have, the less you're going to throw for, unless you're throwing up for 40-yard bombs every single play, but that's not realistic. So Lamar is a huge storyline in himself. Another big storyline is the acquisitions. I just mentioned Odell Beckham, Zay Flowers in there too. This is probably, you kind of think about it, this is probably one of the best, if not the best, wide receiver rooms that the Ravens have ever had. It is by far the best, as we just talked about, Lamar Jackson has ever had. So the big storyline is, all right, you got the offense that actually values wide receivers now, because everybody knew in Greg Roman's offense, wide receivers, it wasn't a place to go if you were a wide receiver, right? You would go there if you were maybe on the end of your career, you get 4 targets a game and you'd be happy with it, right? Now you have an offense that's going to prioritize wide receivers. Obviously, it's not going to take away the run game. It's not going to take away tight end usage, but Odell come in there, Zay Flowers come in there, Rashad Bateman be in there too. It makes sense. That would have never made sense in a Greg Roman offense. Investing what they did in Odell, even though it wasn't a slight overpay, it was a necessary one and one that I think is going to pay off. That would have never made sense under Greg Roman. So a big storyline is, how is Todd Monken going to incorporate all of his new weapons? How is he going to mesh with Lamar Jackson? It seems like it's been going great so far, but obviously once you hit the field, it's a different story. So that's another big storyline. I think another one is the health of J.K. Dobbins and Rashad Bateman and Odell and Lamar. Just the health. We talked about it yesterday when we talked about the Ravens' biggest questions, but it's a big storyline too, because if these guys can stay healthy, I think a lot is in store for them. On the defensive side of the ball, I think Mike McDonald is a big storyline for them and his defense entering year 2 after what was admittedly a slow start, but they came along and were very strong by the end of the season, especially in that playoff game against Cincinnati, which they should have won if Tyler Huntley didn't fumble that ball. That's a big one too. But guys stepping up on defense: Odafe Owe, Kyle Hamilton, Patrick Queen, David Ajabo, Justin Madubuike, Broderick Washington. All those guys are going to have a role to play on the defensive side of the ball this season. And I kind of mentioned it on yesterday's show, but the offensive side of the ball, it's weird because I feel like the unit that has the most pieces moving around, and you have all the questions about, oh, well, how's it going to look? It's first-year offensive coordinator for, new offensive system. You would think that, oh, those storylines would be like, well, is it going to work out? Which it is, but it feels like on defense, it's more, well, if this guy doesn't step up or if that guy doesn't step up, the Ravens are in a world of trouble because they've lost a bunch of veterans this offseason in Calais Campbell, Justin Houston, Marcus Peters, Chuck Clark, all those guys. So they're banking on breakout seasons or close to it from a lot of guys. And I'll tell the Tyus Bowser story again because it kind of relates back. The Tyus Bowser and Tim Williams both had these year 3 expectations. Tyus Bowser was the one, though, who kept those expectations at least realistic and had a pretty good season. Tim Williams did not. Tim Williams got cut mid-season for LJ Fort. Tim Williams got cut. They bring in LJ Fort and Josh Bynes to kind of spark their defense. They never lost again, or at least still a playoff game, but we're not going to talk about that. For this year, Odafe Owe has big year 3 expectations. David Ajabo has big year 2 expectations. Now, they're not going to cut Odafe Owe if he doesn't have a big year 3. But this is kind of a turning point for me. I'm not saying it's make or break for Odafe Owe, but a big storyline is the fact that Odafe Owe had huge expectations last year after having a pretty good rookie season and essentially flopped. And it was very frustrating for him, for the organization, for the fans, for everybody, because there were just such high expectations all around, where Owe was their number 1 pass rusher, but Justin Houston ended up being the number 1 pass rusher based off of production and how good he was. So for Owe, it's going to be huge for him. A big storyline is also the first full year of Roquan Smith and Patrick Queen in Baltimore together. I think they're the best linebacker duo in the NFL. And again, it's weird because usually in the NFL now, at least today, we're seeing more and more teams switch to, well, you don't have to play 2 inside linebackers all the time. You can put a safety in the box. And the Ravens were doing something like that with Chuck Clark for a while. But Roquan Smith is one of the best, if not the best, inside linebacker in the NFL. Patrick Queen is up and coming. He is in a contract year. The Ravens declined his 5th-year option. So what does it mean for him after the season? But entering this year, I think another big just general storyline for the Ravens is playoffs. The Ravens have not had the playoff success under John Harbaugh recently. They had early on in Harbaugh's coaching tenure, where I think they have had just 2 playoff wins, if I'm not mistaken, since they won the Super Bowl. The Ravens don't have a home playoff game win since then as well. They've hosted a couple, the Chargers and, in 2018 under Lamar. If started Lamar, it's 2018 Chargers, 2019 Titans. But the Ravens have not had a home playoff game win since then. So I think for the Ravens, a big storyline is, can they finally grow again? They grew the first 3 years of Lamar Jackson's tenure. Can they make a divisional round? Can they make an AFC championship game? The Ravens have not made the AFC championship game since they won the Super Bowl in 2012, 2013. It's been wild card exits, divisional round exits. That to me is a huge storyline, because if it doesn't happen this year with all the expectations, something must have gone terribly wrong. We talked about ceiling and floor for the Ravens on Monday's episode. I don't know what that means for the Ravens organization and what they do from there. They've fired 2 coordinators in 2 seasons. Do they go for John Harbaugh next? Is it the special teams coordinator? I don't know what they do, but playoff success is a huge storyline for them as well. Coming up in the second part of the show, we're talking a bit about expectations for Baltimore early season, mid-season, and end of season. So be sure to stay tuned. A lot to get to on the show. But first, this episode is brought to you by Harry's. And there are a bunch of people you can shave for: yourself, your partner, your kids. And it also can make you feel really great. It can make you feel confident, attractive, clean, young. No matter why you shave, Harry's has it covered for the best shave of your life at a price you'll love. From their legendary high-quality razors to skin products like exfoliating face wash and hydrating lotion, Harry's gives you the premium shave without premium price tags. Get better quality and a better price than other razors when you get Harry's delivered right to your door. And for Harry's, for me, I like to keep my facial hair. Sometimes I have a little something on my face for facial hair, but usually I like to keep it clean shaven. And Harry's does a great job of getting your facial hair with a clean shave. And a smooth shave shouldn't be rough on your wallet. The starter set is a $13 value for just $3 at harrys.com/NFL. It includes a 5-blade German-engineered razor, weighted handle, foaming shave gel, and a travel cover. Scheduled delivery for refills as low as $2, half what you pay for other blades. Harry's makes the skincare products that will give you the best shave ever. Creams, washes, and lotions that will keep your skin healthy and hydrated. Blades made in their own factory in Germany that stay sharp. Guys who have tried it say their Ace shave is the sharpest there first. They have sleek, weighted handles that look great in your bathroom and give you precise control with each swipe. There's no reason not to try Harry's. Harry's has the highest customer satisfaction in the shaving industry, and they're still offering an no-risk trial. Don't like your shave? No worries. It's on them. Get your best shave ever this summer with Harry's razors and skincare products. Get a $13 starter set for just $3 at harrys.com/NFL. That's harrys.com/NFL for a $3 starter set. We're back here, our second segment of Locked On Ravens. Kevin Oestreicher still here with you on this Wednesday. I appreciate everybody being here for the 2-year anniversary of Locked On Ravens YouTube, which is really cool. I remember starting this off, and we were at the beach theme. We're not necessarily there anymore. We have live fish in the background, but it's been really exciting to see the YouTube community grow. Almost 5,000 subscribers, almost halfway to 10K, which again, so much support. It's been so appreciated, and I really, really do just love all the support that's been gotten here for me on this channel. But let's talk about what to expect for the Ravens. It's a lot. I think a lot of people have very high expectations for them this season. And there are a couple of things I do want to clear up and I guess talk about here in this part of the show. I think early on in the season, I am not expecting the Ravens to dominate every single game. Now, their schedule, you would expect a dominant win over Houston. You'd expect a dominant win over the Colts and maybe even the Titans if you're not a super big Tannehill, Henry Hopkins believer. But those 3 divisional games, you got week 2 against the Bengals, week 4 against the Browns, and then week 5 against the Steelers. Those games, I think that it'll be very interesting how the Ravens end up playing those, because to me, if you go 2-1, and I talked about this on my record prediction that I did earlier in the week, for me, the record is going to be very indicative of a couple of things this year. I always mention that AFC games are super important and much more important than NFC games. If the Ravens drop a game to the 49ers, that's better than them dropping a game to Miami. If they drop a game to Miami, that's better than them dropping a game to Cincinnati. In terms of importance, it goes NFC games, so non-conference games. Then it goes conference games, and then it goes divisional games. So with the way the AFC is set up this season, every single AFC game, every single divisional game is going to be massively important. If the Ravens go 1-2 or 0-3 in that 3-game divisional stretch in the first 5 weeks, that's not good. That's not good. 1, any loss is bad for your record, but 2, there are going to be plenty of teams this year that miss the playoffs with 10 wins or maybe even 11 wins. It's going to be that kind of year in the AFC, it feels like, where there's going to be this full cluster of teams. I think 1 or 2 teams will separate themselves. Then there's going to be a full cluster. The difference between Baltimore separating themselves and being in that cluster, I truly think, is that 3-game stretch at the beginning of the season there. Because after that, you have games against the Titans, which I mentioned, but then it's Detroit and Arizona and Seattle. Like, those games there are all winnable. They're all NFC games outside of Tennessee, but you can pick up 3 wins there if you play up to your potential, which again is not a guarantee, not a given. But I still think that the Ravens have a path to not be in that cluster. Now, there is a different conversation to be had if there are injuries or if they hit their floor, as we've talked about. But I don't know. I feel like this year for the Ravens, it's going to be a bit of an adjustment period, but it can't be as big of an adjustment period as it was last year with the defense for the offense. What I mean by that is with Mike McDonald, that week 2 game against the Dolphins, that was an adjustment. That was his welcome to the NFL moment, where I think in that fourth quarter when the Ravens are up big, I hate reminiscing about it, but we're going to do it. He definitely had a couple learning experiences in that with the way, and Kyle Hamilton did too. It was learning experience for a lot of guys, but I think they grew from it. Now, what I mean by it's not going to be as good for them if they have that adjustment period this season is because the Ravens didn't have those divisional games last year early on. These are 3 away divisional games. It's not like they can play in the comfort of M&T Bank Stadium for any of them. It's crazy because I guess early in the season you get it all the way, and then late season you're finally like, all right, we got these home divisional games now, which are not going to be easy, but it's easier than traveling on the road. But week 2, is Marlon Humphrey back by then? If not, well, I wouldn't expect a great day from the Baltimore secondary in that one if Marlon Humphrey doesn't play. I don't know what it's going to be in week 4 against Cleveland or week 5 against Pittsburgh. But what I do know is that the Ravens have to win at least 2 of those games. If they don't, their season is not over. I'm not trying to say it is, but it is that important for them to have those wins, because in an AFC that's going to be so uber competitive this year, an AFC loss, a divisional loss, can alter so many things for this team in not a great way. So that's why I think it's really important. So expectations for the beginning of the year, I'd expect not a slow start, but I guess an inconsistent start from the offense as things start to get going. I don't know how long it will be, but again, week 1, I think they should be great. But then after that game, it becomes, well, who is the offense going to be? Once there's tape on them, we'll see, but that's what it is. Mid-season, I expect things to start clicking. We've heard multiple analysts say this as well. LaDainian Tomlinson was one who I think made the point where he expects by mid to end season, this Ravens offense to be clicking on all cylinders. That's what I expect too. By the end of the season, I expect this team to be humming, a well-oiled machine. I'm excited to see what they end up bringing to the table, but I think it's going to be a process, and it's a process for every single team. Some start really fast and fall off. Others start slow and do really well. So I don't know what to expect from, what exact week things are going to click, but I'm not going to say everything's going to be perfect, especially for a defensive unit that is going to be missing their top corner in the one injury that they could not have happened. So it's going to be interesting. I still have high expectations for them. I'm not going to let them off the hook just because I expect some things here and there, but I do expect they're going to be a really good team this year. And coming from the final part of the show, we'll talk about final season predictions for the Ravens, playoffs in particular. So be sure to stay tuned. A lot to get to on Locked On Ravens. But first, this episode is brought to you by Gametime, and there are plenty of times when people get stressed out trying to buy tickets. You're trying to find them last minute. You're hunting down the best price, competing with other buyers for a popular event. Buying tickets to your favorite event shouldn't be stressful. Gametime is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater. You go with killer deals on last-minute tickets and their best price guarantee. You can stop stressing over the tickets and start getting hyped for the fun that you'll have. And there are a lot of fun things coming up in the Baltimore area, particularly that Ravens week 1 game against the Texans. You can go try to find that over on the Gametime app. And there are plenty of things to like about the Gametime app experience. They have flash deals and last minute tickets, easy to find and buy tickets as well for every kind of event in your area. They have images of seat views and lowest price guarantee, event cancellation protection, job loss protection, and more. Gametime is the place for last-minute ticket deals. Forget planning months in advance. Gametime has the deals on tickets right up to the day of the event. Get exclusive flash deals on tickets for football, basketball, baseball, concerts, comedy, theater, and more. The Gametime guarantee means you'll always get the best price if you find tickets in the same section of row for less. Gametime will credit you 110% of that difference. It's the fastest-growing ticketing app in the country for a reason. Get images of your seat before you buy so you know exactly what to expect when you arrive. Buy tickets in a matter of seconds, 2 taps, and you're set. Tickets are sent directly to your phone, so you never have to dig through your email. Snag tickets without the stress with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. We're back here, our final segment of Locked On Ravens. Kevin Ostraker still here with you, talking Ravens football. Again, 2-year anniversary of me getting on YouTube. I've always wanted to do something like this, like, talking. This was Ravens football, talking sports like this, and it's been an absolute blessing. It's been a pleasure for me to do this. I'm super excited to continue, and the community we've built, the community's been awesome. I mean, seriously, the fact that I've been able to build this community and get everybody talking about the Ravens and, giving thought-provoking conversations, at least hopefully that's what people think. But it's been great, and it's been my pleasure to host this show again. This is episode 1068 consecutively. Never taken a weekday off. Obviously, we're only 5 days a week, but never taken a day off here doing this show, and it's been my pleasure doing every single episode. If you want to subscribe on YouTube in audio form, I greatly appreciate that. It's been really fun to be able to grow both communities, right? Because not just the video community, the audio community came first, and I greatly appreciate the audio community as much as the video community, both. Thank you so much for the support. Let's talk about final season predictions for me for the Ravens. I did a record prediction. We've talked bold predictions. So the theme of the final segment in the first 3 episodes this week have been predictions. But I want to talk more so playoffs, because I think when you talk about expectations, we can kind of segue that into this. Expectation-wise, which I've been talking about all week, for playoffs, the Ravens have not had playoff success recently under John Harbaugh, or at least not the playoff success we saw from the Harbaugh-led Ravens earlier in his career. So I've mentioned they have not won a home playoff game since 2012-2013, not made the AFC Championship game since 2012-2013. It's been a struggle for them to get consistent playoff results. And Lamar Jackson, again, only has 1 playoff win in 5 seasons. And look, part of that can be injuries, but I do think that there has to be a step taken. And part of this is, look, Lamar has not had the cast of weapons that some of these other guys have had. He's not had, the offense has been a different offense, but now I think everything's set up. And to me, this is the year. There has to be growth on that ladder. I'm saying AFC Championship. My prediction is the Baltimore makes the AFC Championship game this year, and I'll kind of walk you through the process. I think the Baltimore can win the AFC North, but it doesn't matter to me if they do or don't. I think that either way, they're going to make the playoffs and make the AFC Championship game. Baltimore's made noise as a wild card team before. That doesn't necessarily bother me. I think Baltimore and Cincinnati actually end up tying for the division, and then Baltimore wins it based off head-to-head. I think Baltimore sweeps Cincinnati, and that's where that comes into effect. But I think that Baltimore is a team that is very deep offensively and defensively, and special teams. We don't have to talk about that with Justin Tucker, but it feels like the Ravens have finally found an offensive system that fits Lamar Jackson like a glove. They've put the weapons around him to be able to have him maximize his entire skill set. And it's not like the Ravens are going to abandon the run game, which essentially has been their bread and butter over the past 5 seasons. They're not getting rid of it. They still have JK. They still have Gus Edwards. Todd Monken as an offensive coordinator is someone that utilizes the guys that he has to their skill sets. That doesn't mean that he's not going to run the ball. He knows he has J.K. Dobbins. He knows he has Gus Edwards, but I'm expecting more throwing, as is everybody else, because that's what Todd Monken loves to do. Is what Lamar Jackson loves to do. And there is an understanding between John Harbaugh and Monken and Lamar that there's going to be an offense that Lamar can have free reign in. And I'm not saying he does everything in the offense. Todd Monken is still going to be a factor, but the Ravens, I think, trust Lamar, and that goes a long way. I don't think Lamar felt like he was trusted in the offensive system. I don't think Lamar lacks confidence. I don't think he ever has lacked confidence. But to me, it's pretty obvious that Lamar just feels more comfortable because his offensive coordinator believes in him a little more. At least it's more outwardly obvious that his offensive coordinator believes in him. So I'm really excited to see what that is. And that's why even if the offense does start a little bit slow, I do think that they're going to get it together. If it's bad by midseason, I don't think it will be. But there are so many different types of skill sets around Lamar, plus Lamar's unique skill set himself. On the defensive side of the ball, with Roquan Smith and Marlon Humphrey, again, assuming everyone's healthy, Roquan and Marlon and Marcus Williams and Kyle Hamilton and all those pieces, they have really nice foundational pieces. Patrick Queen in that conversation as well. But if they can get a breakout season from Renate Hoy, if they can get a breakout season from Justin Madubuike, it just goes such a long way. And while I think they will miss some of the veteran leadership, Baltimore clearly wanted to get a little younger on the defensive side of the ball, which is fine. Hopefully Jadeveon Clowney can make an impact as well. But I do think that there's a lot to like about the Ravens this season. But then you get to the gauntlet that's the AFC. The gauntlet that's the AFC in the playoffs. You're going to have to go through at least one of Buffalo, Cincinnati, Kansas City. You know, if you're a wild card team, what division winner are you playing? It's going to probably be one of those 3 teams. But then you have wild card teams that could give you a run for your money. Maybe the Jets with Aaron Rodgers. What about the Titans if they make it? If you're a Tannehill believer, which I don't know if there are many out there, but what about the Chargers or the Broncos or the Dolphins or the Browns or the Steelers? There are a lot of good teams this year. And I'm very excited to kind of see how this whole AFC playoff picture unfolds. Again, it's going to be probably a playoff picture of inches where tiebreakers, and the Ravens had that a couple of years ago where they made it just barely in a tiebreaker. I think the Dolphins were the odd team out with 10 or 11 wins that year. And the AFC is much more stacked this year than it was that year. So my final season predictions, I think the Ravens have enough going for them, especially with what they've built off the field so far and on it during training camp in the preseason. Feels like the vibes are there. And again, vibes don't get you to the AFC Championship game, but I think that there is 100, just because I say the Ravens make the AFC Championship doesn't mean I think they can't win the Super Bowl. They absolutely can. But for me, my final prediction, it's one that I feel confident saying this year because I think the pieces are there. I will say it's an AFC Championship at least for the Baltimore Ravens in 2023. That's all I have for you here today on Locked On Ravens. Thank you so much for tuning in. Coming up tomorrow, our first crossover Thursday of 2023 with Locked On Texans, previewing the Ravens and Texans Week 1 matchup. So be sure to stay tuned for that. Plenty to talk about here on the show. I'll see you right back here tomorrow on Locked On Ravens.